Ascent Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents HBR's 10 Must-Reads 2024, the definitive management ideas of the year from Harvard Business Review, with bonus article, Democratizing Transformation, by Marco Iansiti and Satya Nadella, by Harvard Business Review, narrated by Hendrix and Lyle Blaker. Publisher's note. This audiobook has bonus material. Please contact whomever you purchase this audiobook from to request the material. All exhibits and visual aids referenced in this audiobook can be found in the bonus material. Editor's note. Every year, a team of editors gathers to read and review, discuss, and debate 12 months' worth of Harvard Business Review articles to select the ones we think are most likely to spark conversation, inspire innovation, and move you and your organization forward. We bring to the figurative table our individual challenges and experiences, topic interests, and perspectives on the cutting-edge ideas driving business today. But we read and evaluate all the articles with you in mind. Keeping up with the latest research, trends, and influential thinking is time-consuming. If you're able to listen to only 11 articles, whether all at once on a flight or in stolen spurts during your day, which ones will bring you and your organization the most value? Which will surprise and delight you? Which will you talk about with friends and colleagues? Which will spur your thinking to action? We believe the articles in this collection meet those criteria. The past few years have proved that one thing we know for certain is that nothing is certain. Our world is ever-changing. We must work hard to adapt to whatever comes next, while still trying to create and carry out long-term plans. COVID-19 is mostly behind us, yet its impact lingers. A dispersed and disengaged workforce, supply chain blips and breakdowns, and rusty interpersonal skills. We all endured the same global pandemic, yet it highlighted that our employees, customers, and businesses are in unique contexts that shape their worldview and ability to adjust to changing conditions. We made great technological strides, from switching to video for meetings to moving business into space, while watching enthusiasm for crypto swing from high to low. No bets are sure, and no one solution fits all. But we can learn new skills, revive stale connections, measure things that matter, and make headway despite headwinds. The articles in this collection will help you prepare for whatever lies ahead for you and your business. Dealing with uncertainty and change is yet one more challenge for leaders, which is why we open this volume with Managers Can't Do It All. With sweeping re-engineering, digitization, agile initiatives, and the post-pandemic move to remote work, the job description for manager has altered dramatically. Managers now have to think more about making their teams successful than about what individuals can do for them. They must coach performance rather than oversee tasks, and lead in rapidly changing environments. These additional responsibilities require managers to demonstrate new capabilities, and research shows that most of them are struggling to keep up. Some organizations, however, are heading off trouble by reimagining the manager's role. In this article, Diane Gerson and Linda Grattan examine 3 companies, Standard Chartered, IBM, and Telstra, that have helped managers develop new skills, rewire systems and processes to better support their work, and radically redefine their responsibilities to meet the new priorities of the era. If you're not in tech, you may have asked yourself, what is Web 3? You've read the headlines and heard the buzz, but you may not be clear on what it is and what it could do for you and your company. HBR editor Thomas Stackpole tackles this complicated and swiftly evolving subject and distills it, clearly explaining the differences among Web 1, Web 2, and Web 3. His detailed case stories bring to life the challenges and the opportunities. We've also included Cautionary Tales from Cryptoland, an interview with the software engineer and Web 3 critic Molly White to offset the headlines and the hype. The next article, Selling on TikTok and Taobao, continues the exploration of what tech could be, this time from a marketing perspective. Whether you remember watching QVC on TV or were raised on digital ads on tablets, you know that the future of retail lies in social commerce. Thomas S. Robertson, a professor of marketing at Wharton, provides case studies to inspire you to think about how your company might experiment with live-stream commerce. To gain advantage, consider 6 key factors, including how to integrate it into your existing marketing strategy, how to select your key opinion leaders, also known as influencers, and how to measure your success. Robertson explores what's behind the rise in live-stream commerce, explains the motivations of brands that are already experimenting with it, and offers guidance on the smartest ways to invest in this emerging channel. Weaving together the idea of customers as stakeholders and life in an uncertain and volatile world, Managing in the Age of Outrage addresses the polarization that is prevalent around the globe. Almost every leader in every sector must deal with angry stakeholders. But hearing employees or customers speak out over a singular incident is not a new phenomenon. What makes this era uniquely challenging is a perfect storm of 3 forces. People feel unhopeful about the future. They believe that the game has been rigged against them. And they are drawn to ideologies that legitimatize an us versus them approach. In this piece, Oxford's Karthik Ramana shares a 5-step framework for dealing with outrage that draws on analytical insights from disciplines as wide-ranging as the science of aggression, managerial economics, organizational behavior, and political philosophy. From situations that feel difficult to manage to progress that feels difficult to measure, the 5 stages of DEI maturity advances the diversity, equity, and inclusion DEI conversation. Companies looking to make progress on DEI begin with good intentions and often make big declarations about implementing ambitious strategies before they have the necessary culture and structures in place to support their goals. Georgetown professor and organizational psychologist Ella F. Washington describes 5 stages that companies typically move through as they establish their DEI goals and work toward making progress on them. Understanding what stage your company is in can help you decide where to focus your energies most effectively and keep you from getting stuck. We've also added, to avoid DEI backlash, focus on changing systems, not people, by DEI strategist and consultant Lily Zhang, who recommends focusing on the process, policy, and practices that contribute to organizational inequity. Doing so will help galvanize your workforce while lowering the risk that your employees feel personally targeted. We know that we measure what matters, but as with DEI efforts, context may make it difficult to gauge the impact of environmental, social, and governance ESG goals. Despite heightened attention to ESG issues, surprisingly few companies are making meaningful progress in delivering on their commitments. Why? Harvard Business School professor Mark R. Kramer and global social impact consultant Mark W. Fitzer argue in The Essential Link Between ESG Targets and Financial Performance that the key to building a sustainable business model is to tie your ESG goals to your business objectives, operations, and strategy. To integrate them into your company's core business models, you must identify the ESG issues material to your business. Factor in ESG effects when making strategic, financial, and operational decisions. Collaborate with stakeholders. Redesign organizational roles. And communicate with investors. The rich examples in this article demonstrate that there are no easy answers, and that ripples extend further than intended. Meetings, especially those you have with your own manager or with your direct reports, are crucial to achieving your company's short and long-term goals. But few organizations provide guidance or training on conducting individual meetings. And when our calendars are full, sometimes we shirk or shortchange our one-on-ones, believing that our time would be better spent elsewhere. Done right, however, these meetings add value. In Make the Most of Your One-on-One Meetings, author and professor Stephen G. Rogelberg writes that managers should focus on making sure the meetings actually happen and at a predictable cadence, creating space for genuine conversation, asking good questions, offering support, and helping team members get what they need to thrive in both their short-term performance and their long-term growth. We've also included 5 questions every manager needs to ask their direct reports by Coach Susan Peppercorn to provide additional suggested language and conversation starters that will make your employees feel seen and valued in your routine check-ins. Intergenerational conflict isn't new, but with 5 generations in many workplaces, tensions are mounting. Lack of trust between older and younger workers often creates a culture of competition and resentment that leads to losses in productivity. But when age-diverse teams are managed well, their members can share a wide array of skills, knowledge, and networks with one another. Harnessing the Power of Age Diversity argues that today's organizations already have the means to help leaders take advantage of these assets. Megan W. Gerhardt, Josephine Nackimson-Ekwall, and Brandon Fogel, co-authors of the book Gintelligence, offer a 4-part framework for identifying assumptions, adjusting your lens, taking advantage of differences, and embracing mutual learning. Alongside this piece, we've added, Is Generational Prejudice Seeping into Your Workplace? By founders CEO Christy DePaul and HBR editor Vasundhara Sauni, which explores whether intergenerational anxiety stems from actual differences or is created by the mere belief that certain disparities exist. Regardless of which generation you're in, The C-Suite Skills That Matter Most by Rafaela Sadun, Joseph Fuller, Stephen Hansen, and P.J. Neal reveals another long-term impact of the pandemic. A shift in demand from candidates with strong technical skills to those with strong people skills. We need leaders who can motivate diverse, technologically savvy, and global workforces. The softer skills, including self-awareness, empathy, and the ability to listen and communicate well, are rarely recognized or fostered in the corporate world, especially at the senior leader level. Companies still value C-suite executives with traditional administrative and operational skills, but they should increasingly be on the lookout for people with highly developed social skills, especially if their organizations are large, complex, and technologically intensive. Moving forward, when you're not sure what's next, requires more than rethinking the hiring process. It requires rethinking business practices, such as operations and innovation. If you think your organization or industry will never be in space or develop bespoke launch services, think again. If your company gathers or uses GPS data, you're already getting value from space, and you're not alone. Rapidly falling costs and fleets of new satellites are creating big opportunities for business. Space is becoming a potential source of value for companies across a range of sectors, from agriculture to pharmaceuticals. in Your Company Needs a Space Strategy. Now, Professors Matthew Weinzerl, Prithviraj Raj Chowdhury, Tarun Khanna, Alan McCormick, and Brendan Rousseau propose 4 areas in which space could create value for your organization: data, capabilities, resources, and markets. Companies looking longer term will want to explore the value to be gained from conducting activities in space, utilizing space assets, and meeting demand from the new space age. We close out this collection with Democratizing Transformation by Harvard Business School professor Marco Iansiti and Microsoft chairman and CEO Satya Nadella. If your company's digital transformation efforts seem to have sputtered or stalled, it's probably because the work cannot be done by isolated technologists and data scientists alone. True growth and transformation require that larger and more diverse groups of employees, executives, managers, and frontline workers come together to rethink how every aspect of your business should operate. The authors describe the 5 stages of digital transformation, from the traditional stage, in which digital and technology are strictly the province of the IT department, to the ideal native stage. The hallmarks of the native stage are an operating architecture designed to deploy AI at scale across a huge, distributed spectrum of applications. A core of experts, broadly accessible, easy-to-use tools, an investment in training and capability building across the enterprise. We can't know, of course, what opportunities and challenges the coming year will bring. But we do know that we need to continue our work on initiatives that matter to our organizational culture and our planet, even when the goals are lofty and the metrics are fuzzy, that bridge divides of age and perspective, and that envision and create a future when the present is still a work in progress. In the absence of hard answers or roadmaps, we hope this curated collection gives you insights and inspiration to spark ideas for making strides toward the objectives that provide value for you and your organization. The editors. Managers Can't Do It All by Diane Gerson and Linda Grattan. Idea in brief. The problem. Managers are the lifeblood of organizations. In recent decades, as the workplace has changed, they've been asked to take on new responsibilities and demonstrate new skills, and are struggling to cope. This threatens productivity, employee well-being, and brand reputation. The new reality. Change has come along 3 dimensions. Power. Managers have to think about making teams successful, not being served by them. Skills. They're expected to coach performance, not oversee tasks. And structure. They have to lead in more fluid environments. The way forward. We need to do everything we can to help managers adapt. The 3 companies featured in this article have deliberately and successfully transformed the role of manager so that it better meets the demands of 21st century work. End of Idea in Brief section. Jennifer stares at her upward feedback report and wonders how she got to this point. How could a veteran like her, someone who was once celebrated as Manager of the Year, receive such negative ratings? She used to enjoy her role, but now everything feels out of control. Her job has been reshaped so constantly by sweeping process reengineering, digitization, and agile initiatives, and most recently by remote work, that she always feels at least one step behind. The amount of change that has taken place in just the past few years is overwhelming. The management layer above her was eliminated, which doubled the size of her team, and almost half the people on it are now working on cross-division projects led by other managers. She and her team used to meet in her office for progress reviews, but now she has no office, and if she wants to know how her people are doing, she has to join their stand-ups, which makes her feel like an onlooker rather than their boss. She no longer feels in touch with how everybody is doing, and yet she has the same set of personnel responsibilities as before, providing performance feedback, making salary adjustments, hiring and firing, engaging in career discussions. Not only that, but she's being asked to take on even more. Because her company is rapidly digitizing, for example, she's responsible for upgrading her staff's technical skills. This makes her uncomfortable because it feels threatening to many of her team members. When she talks with them about it, she's expected to demonstrate endless amounts of empathy, something that has never been her strong suit. She's supposed to seek out diverse talent and create a climate of psychological safety, while simultaneously downsizing the unit. She understands why all these things are important, but they're not what she signed up for when she became a manager, and she's just not sure that she has the emotional energy to handle them. What happened to the stable, well-defined job that she was so good at for so long? What happened to the power and status that used to come with that job? Is she the problem? Is she simply no longer able to keep up with the demands of the evolving workplace? Is she now part of the frozen middle, the much-maligned layer of management that obstructs change rather than enables it? Jennifer, a composite of several real people we have met in our work, has no answers to these questions. All she knows is that she's frustrated, unhappy, and overwhelmed, as are managers everywhere. One of us, Linda, is an academic researcher and consultant to corporations, and the other, Diane, was until her recent retirement the Chief Human Resources Officer at IBM, in which she still owns stock. In those roles, we have closely observed the changing job of the manager, and we can report that a crisis is looming. The signs are everywhere. In 2021, when we asked executives from 60 companies around the world how their managers were doing, we got unanimous reports of frustration and exhaustion. Similarly, when the research firm Gartner asked 75 HR leaders from companies worldwide how their managers were faring, 68% reported that they were overwhelmed. Nonetheless, according to Gartner, only 14% of those companies had taken steps to help alleviate their managers' burdens. The problem isn't hard to diagnose. The traditional role of the manager evolved in the hierarchical workplaces of the industrial age. But in our fluid, flatter, post-industrial age, that role is beginning to look archaic. The irony is that we actually need great people leaders more than ever. Microsoft has found, for example, that when managers help teams prioritize, nurture their culture, and support work-life balance, employees feel more connected and are more positive about their work. The consulting firm O.C. Tanner has likewise found that weekly one-to-ones with managers during uncertain times lead to a 54% increase in engagement, a 31% increase in productivity, a 15% decrease in burnout, and a 16% decrease in depression among employees. Meanwhile, according to McKinsey, having good relationships with their managers is the top factor in employees' job satisfaction, which in turn is the second most important determinant of their overall well-being. Conversely, bad managers can significantly hurt retention and engagement. 75% of the participants in the McKinsey survey reported that the most stressful aspect of their jobs was their immediate boss. As the saying goes, people join companies and leave their managers. Something is clearly broken. If managers remain essential, but their traditional role has become obsolete, then it's obviously time for a change. In this article, we'll make the case for redefining and even splitting the role, rather than simply continuing to let it evolve. which is a potentially costly and disastrous course of action. But first, let's briefly take stock of the waves of innovation that have brought us to this crisis point. 4 defining business movements. The first wave, process reengineering, began in about 1990 and lasted until the early 2000s. It focused on eliminating bureaucracy and boosting operational efficiencies. With the help of consulting firms, which developed practices around this kind of work, companies globalized and outsourced their processes, flattened their hierarchies, and in many cases put their remaining managers in player-coach roles that required them to take on workers' tasks. These changes reduced costs, but they also made life a lot harder for managers. They now had wider responsibilities and significantly larger teams to supervise, and were also expected to dedicate themselves personally to projects and customers. The next wave of innovation, digitization, arrived in about 2010. Promisingly, it democratized access to both information and people, but in doing so, it undermined traditional sources of managerial power. CEOs and other senior leaders could now communicate directly with their entire workforces, sharing strategies, priorities, and important updates and responding to concerns. No longer a necessary part of the information loop, managers began to feel a loss of power, control, and status. Then came the Agile movement and its process changes, which companies began to adopt in the mid to late 2010s. It aimed to shorten timelines and turbocharge innovation by using internal marketplaces across whole organizations to match skills to work and to rapidly assemble project teams on an as-needed basis. As a result, managers started to lose touch with their reports, who now spend much of their time under the rotating supervision of the project managers they were temporarily assigned to. And because candidates could be matched to openings online, managers lost the power and authority involved with brokering career opportunities for their people. Finally, a 4th wave arrived in 2020 with the pandemic, when companies and employees were forced to embrace the possibilities of flexible work. This was a watershed moment. It dramatically altered how and where work was done. Once employees were no longer tied to a physical workplace, managers lost the close control that they used to have over employees' performance and behavior, and employees began to realize that they could tap a greater range of job options, far beyond commuting distance from their homes. These changes were liberating, but they placed even more of a burden on managers, who now were also expected to cultivate empathetic relationships that would allow them to engage and retain the people they supervised. These waves of innovation have changed the role of the manager along 3 dimensions: power, skills, and structure. In a power shift, managers have to think about making teams successful, not being served by them. In a skills shift, they're expected to coach performance, not oversee tasks. And in a structural shift, they have to lead in more fluid environments. These changes have empowered employees, which of course is a good thing, but they've also altered how managers drive productivity. Organizations are starting to recognize this. When we asked the executives in our 60-company survey to list the most important areas that managers need to focus on today, their top answers were coaching, communication, and employee well-being. From manager to people leader. 3 fundamental shifts in the role of managers today. A power shift, from me to we. My team makes me successful, becomes, I'm here to make my team successful. I'm rewarded for achieving business goals, becomes, I'm also rewarded for improving team engagement, inclusion, and skills relevancy. I control how people move beyond my unit, becomes, I scout for talent, and help my team move fluidly to wider opportunities. A skills shift, from task overseer to performance coach. I oversee work.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?